Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Magtabe, and this is my final project for Communications 3210 with Katie Warfield. For my story, I will be talking about an interpersonal communication interaction that I had with a customer at work. Typically with retail jobs, I notice workers solely focus on Martin Buber's I-it relationships with customers, but I've always tried to do more than just sell because I have the goal of creating recurring clients, so I put in that extra work to create a relationship with new clients that is closer to the IU region. At work, I play the role of a sales specialist. This is relevant to Irving Goffman's theory of social interactionism, which he refers to as the dramaturgical model of social life. As a sales specialist, I have the requirements of making sure I am in the front stage region of Goffman's theory. In this act, I am aware of my audience's expectations, which in this case is both my employer and my clients, and this greatly influences my behavior in the role. I also have the key goal to uphold the play. This is to ensure my client is happy and satisfied at the end of the transaction, carrying out the play to a happy ending. So, a bit of an overview of my story. My customer was a tourist and didn't know how to speak much English. He also came into the store during a very busy time, and this caused barriers to communication and called for interpersonal skills to ensure the interaction still ends up well at the end. Using the interpersonal communication theory, Martin Buber's IU philosophy, Irving Goffman's dramaturgical theory, types of nonverbal communication, and also rhetorical strategies, I will analyze the encounter I had between my customer and I. So my customer's name in this encounter is Lucas. This is Lucas. It was his first time shopping at our store. He was on vacation from Mexico and came in to buy a Christmas gift for his wife and daughter. When he came in, we first exchanged hellos, and I introduced myself. I asked how he was and continued my encounter as I typically would in this act that I play. I greeted him as I normally would to all my clients. In my greetings to clients, I use interpersonal skills that I acquired from working in retail for 6 years. This is where I ask only open-ended questions in order to get sufficient answers. I also use the terms we or us, like in my question where I ask, what brings us in today? Or what are we looking for today? Because this makes it more personal and shows them that I'm involving myself in their shopping experience and that I do care about the outcome of the transaction. However, after asking him, I noticed that he seemed quite troubled, and then he went on and asked me, ¿Habla español? Unfortunately, I did not speak Spanish yet at that time, so this was the first barrier to communication, which is the use of language. He told me that he was traveling from Mexico and has a lot of trouble speaking English, but that he can understand a little bit. I assured him that it's totally fine and that everything will still be okay. Because of this, I knew how important it was to focus on nonverbal communication, meaning lots of symbolic kinesics, adding gestures that accentuate what I'm trying to say. The location of the store that I worked in was in downtown, so we always have tourists from all over the world, making language and cultural barriers very common. On top of that barrier, the day that he visited was also a really busy day because it was during the holiday season. With our store being packed with holiday shoppers, there was a second barrier to communication, which was physical noise. The physical noise around us caused too much interference between my clients and I, Analyzing elements of interpersonal competence, I first tried noise management using rhetorical techniques of repetition when trying to say something. However, based on the feedback, I noticed his body language. He kept putting his hand on his ear and leaning in closer to me, and seemed like he was starting to feel a bit flustered. To minimize the amount of physical noise, I told him that we could move to a different area in the store to allow for better communication. After moving to a quieter area, I can tell that the interference between us has significantly decreased. Keeping in mind the language barrier, I kept my open ended questions quite simple. First, I asked him, "Who are you shopping for?" He said it's for his wife and daughter, but has no clue what to get them. I asked if he had a photo of them and if it were okay to show me. He said sure and immediately brought out his phone and showed me a photo of them. When I saw the photo, I applied a visual analysis to give myself an idea about what their style sort of is, and this would help me bring out items that I feel they may possibly like. I took into account that I saw his daughter had a very similar style as me and was around my age, and that his wife had a very similar style to my mom. I asked him if they had any hobbies or anything that makes them happy. This is where he had trouble translating in English, so I took one of the iPads we used at work for transactions and let him type into Google Translate to make it easier for him, and I noticed this made him feel so much more relieved. The translation said his daughter loves to sing and loves to read, and that his wife loves flowers and butterflies. I then applied my rhetorical strategies in persuasion and ways to influence and convince him that these items I brought out are good. Rhetorical strategies are very important and useful to making a successful sale. Referring to the Neo Aristotelian perspective, I always keep in mind the five canons of good speech slash persuasive argument. So the first one would be invention. I focus on pathos, the appeal to emotion and their effects on audience. I used pathos in this encounter by first bringing out the new father daughter charms and family charms, and this appealed to emotion as he said he loved those very much. I then brought out charms corresponding to the descriptions he gave me, and he liked all of them as well. The second is arrangement, the patterns I use in the sale. I use the patterns of saying how everything is a good deal right now because it is the holiday season and that he saves money if he buys the holiday gift set. I use the patterns of picking out my personal favorite items, and he also took that into account. When he picks something, I use the patterns of agreement and reassure him, saying, "That's a really good choice." So, number three is style, using specific words that are fitting for the situation. Since he was a tourist, I used the strategy of bringing out our exclusive charms that he can only buy in Canada. I used specific words and made it clear that these can only be bought here and not in Mexico. This made him want to get those as well. Fourth is delivery. So, with delivery, it's important to speak with a positive tone when making recommendations. So, my use of voice and body language is very important as a sales specialist. I maintain eye contact and make sure I'm engaging my client even if there is a language barrier. I would specifically hand the charms to him to hold, which made this more engaging while I was describing that item is very popular. And number five is memory, which is confidence and ease of delivery. He first had trouble picking out the selections I showed him, so to make it easier for him, I pointed out all of the ones that were my personal favorites and ones I think are the most beautiful. He trusted my opinion and bought all of those. Because of my rhetorical skills and interpersonal skills, he bought everything I showed him and also had a positive outcome at the end. He was happy with what he ended up buying. I knew this was a successful transaction when he told me, "Thank you very much for being so kind. Next time I come back, I'll bring my family here too." By the smile of his face as he was walking out of the store, I knew I upheld the play correctly. So, in conclusion, I conclude that despite the number of barriers to everyday communication that is present in the real world, an interpersonal encounter can still be successful in the end when using the proper skills and applying the proper theories. I knew that the outcome of my interaction with Lucas was successful, and I knew I upheld the play correctly.